Sonia had always dreamed of a happy family, a loving husband, a peaceful home, and children who would fill the air with laughter. Raised in a modest family, she was the youngest of 4 siblings, and her childhood had been filled with warmth, love, and care, the kind of love she expected to extend into her marriage. When she met Chuks, she believed her dreams had begun to come true. Chuks was everything she had hoped for: kind, gentle, hardworking, and deeply in love with her. They met at a friend's wedding, and from that day forward, they were inseparable. It wasn't long before Chuks asked for her hand in marriage. Sonia said yes without hesitation, her heart swelling with joy as she imagined their future together. Their wedding was a grand affair, full of laughter and celebration. Chuks' family came from a long line of wealthy farmers and traders, respected in the community for their status and generosity. At the center of the family was Chuks' mother, Mama Chuks. She was a tall, imposing woman who carried herself with an air of authority. Mama Chuks had lost her husband years earlier and now controlled the family's business and household with an iron fist. Despite her intimidating presence, Sonia wanted to win her mother-in-law's approval. She knew how important family was to Chuks, and she wanted to make a good impression. In the early days of her marriage, Sonia worked hard to please Mama Chuks. She cooked, cleaned, and helped with family gatherings, all while trying to make her new home as warm and inviting as the one she had grown up in. But no matter what she did, Sonia could sense that something was off. Mama Chuks was never outright rude, but there was always an undercurrent of disdain in her tone, an unspoken disapproval that seemed to linger in the air. At first, Sonia thought it was just the typical friction that could arise in any new marriage, especially when living so close to the in-laws. She hoped that in time things would improve. Months passed, and Sonia and Chuck's relationship grew stronger. They were happy, sharing quiet moments together, laughing, dreaming about the future. But one topic that began to dominate their conversations was children. "How many children do you want?" Chuks would ask, holding her close as they lay in bed. "3, Sonia would reply with a smile. "2 boys and a girl." Chuks would chuckle and say, "I want 4. 2 boys, 2 girls. Let's make it even." They both laughed, their excitement about the future palpable. But as the months turned into a year, and then 2, something changed. The absence of children began to cast a shadow over their happiness. Sonia noticed it first in the questions from neighbors and relatives at family gatherings. Sonia, when will we hear the sound of a baby's cry in this house?" one of Chuks' aunts would ask, her tone laced with curiosity. "We are waiting, please," another would add. "The family needs to grow." Each question felt like a tiny jab, a reminder of something Sonia couldn't control. But it wasn't until Chuks' mother began to comment that the weight of her situation fully sank in. One evening, after a family dinner, Chuks' mother pulled Sonia aside. "Sonia, my daughter," she began in a tone that was anything but affectionate. "It has been 2 years now, and still no child. What are you waiting for? Chuks is my only son, and this family needs an heir. What are you doing to solve this problem?" Sonia felt a lump form in her throat. She had been trying desperately to get pregnant. She had visited doctors, prayed fervently, and even followed the advice of friends who suggested traditional remedies. But nothing had worked. "Mummy," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I am trying." "We are trying. It's not happening yet." Chuck's mother's eyes hardened. Trying is not enough. You need to do more. What kind of woman cannot bear a child? My son deserves children, an heir to carry on this family's name. If you cannot give him that, then what use are you? The words cut Sonia like a knife. She had always feared that her inability to conceive would bring tension into her marriage, but she had never imagined that her mother-in-law would be so cruel. From that day forward, Mama Chuks' attitude toward her only worsened. Sonia was no longer the new bride trying to win favor. She had become the barren wife, a disappointment, a failure in Chuck's mother's eyes. Every interaction with her mother-in-law became laced with venom. When Sonia would enter the kitchen to help with dinner, Mama Chuks would mutter under her breath, "What is the point of cooking when there are no children to feed?" When family members came to visit, Mama Chuks would openly comment, "Chuks needs a real wife, one who can bear him children, not this one who cannot even give him a son." The shame and pain of it all weighed heavily on Sonia. She began to avoid family gatherings, finding excuses to stay in her room or visit her own parents. But even there, the questions followed her. "My dear," her mother would say gently, "we are praying for you. But you must act quickly. A woman's worth is in her ability to give her husband children. You cannot let time pass like this." Sonia felt trapped, suffocated by the expectations of those around her. Chuks tried to comfort her, but even he seemed to be growing distant. He loved her, she knew that, but she could see the pain in his eyes, the quiet longing for a child that he tried to hide. "Don't listen to my mother," Chuks would say, pulling her into his arms. "We will have children when the time is right." But despite his reassurances, Sonia could feel the strain it was putting on their marriage. Every time a friend or relative announced a pregnancy, every time a child ran past their home, the silence between them grew heavier. The final blow came one fateful day when Sonia overheard a conversation between Chuck's mother and a neighbor. They were sitting on the front porch, unaware that Sonia was nearby. "I have already started looking for another wife for Chuks," Mama Chuks was saying. "This one is useless. She cannot even do the one thing a woman is supposed to do." The words echoed in Sonia's mind, leaving her breathless. Another wife? The idea was unbearable. She had always feared that Chuks might be pressured into finding someone else, but hearing it confirmed was devastating. That evening, when Chuks returned home, Sonia confronted him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Is your mother looking for another wife for you?" Chuks's face fell and he looked away. "Sonia, you know how she is. She says things. It doesn't mean I agree with her." "Do you want another wife?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," Chuks replied, but his hesitation was enough to confirm her worst fears. Sonia felt as though the world was collapsing around her. She had done everything she could to be a good wife, to please her husband and to win her mother-in-law's approval. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough if she couldn't give them the one thing they all wanted. That night, Sonia lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears silently streaming down her face. She loved Chuks with all her heart, but the pressure, the shame, and the cruelty from Mama Chuks had become unbearable. She couldn't stay in a home where she was treated as less than human, where her worth was tied to something beyond her control. The next morning, Sonia packed her bags. When Chuks woke up and saw her, he rushed to her side. "Sonia, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice full of panic. "I can't stay here anymore," she said, her voice hollow. "I love you, Chuks, but your mother? I can't live like this." Chuks's eyes filled with tears, but he knew deep down that Sonia was right. He had failed to protect her, to stand up for her when she needed him most. "Sonia, please don't leave," he pleaded, but she shook her head. "I have to go. Maybe one day things will be different. But right now, I need to find peace." With that, Sonia left the home she had hoped would be filled with love and laughter. She returned to her parents' house, where she found solace in their quiet understanding. Her journey wasn't over, and though the pain of leaving Chuks behind was almost too much to bear, Sonia knew that she had to find herself again. Weeks turned into months, and during that time, Sonia focused on healing. She sought medical advice, turned to prayer, and leaned on the support of friends and family who reminded her that her worth was not tied to her ability to bear children. One day, while sitting in the garden of her parents' home, Chuks appeared at the gate. His face was weary, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Sonia," he began, his voice soft, "I've come to take you home, if you'll have me." Sonia looked at him, unsure. "What about your mother?" she asked. Chuck shook his head. "I've told her that if she cannot respect you, then I will not stay under her roof. I love you, Sonia. I don't care if we have children or not. I want to build a life with you." Tears filled Sonia's eyes as she looked at the man she had married. The man who had finally chosen her over the expectations of others. With a trembling voice, she replied, "I'll come home." And in that moment, Sonia knew that while the journey ahead would still have its challenges, she and Chuks would face it together. The weight of her mother-in-law's cruelty no longer had the power to break her, for she had found her own strength, and in doing so, had found her way back to love.